Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make a lot of money on the internet. Loaded up for discussion today, we have billionaire hedge fund manager Paul Tudor Jones saying he is long gold, commodities, and our favorite coin, Bitcoin. Number two, Pump Fund announces video tokenization. We'll have a little breakdown on that, see how that's going. And finally, GOAT is at an all-time high, gone past $600 million market cap as Mark Andreessen publishes podcast dedicated to Truth Terminal and the current and future convergence of AI and crypto. We'll get into that in just a little bit. We've also got the latest on price action on crypto and NFTs and a cool branding discussion where we lay out some of the design thoughts and processes we've been through as part of our rebrand that might be able to help people going through the same thing. So stay tuned for that. Today, we've got a full house. Legendary, Sam, and Bread are with me. We are ready to get into it. But before we do that, just a reminder, friends, that nothing that we say here is financial advice because the market is very, very difficult to predict. And we do not know how to predict it. So please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, it is Wednesday. It is the 23rd of October. Bread, how you doing, my man? How are things?
Oh, he's frozen, I think.
The riskiest option.
That was the risky option. We've gone to Bread. He is currently practicing being a statue.
You know, I can hear you, but it was coming in sketchy. How do I sound?
You sound fine.
You're frozen.
But you just look very scary because you're speaking, but while still being very still. So very, very scary. Are you doing well? Can you hear us? No. He's going to try and be back with us in just a little bit. Legendary, it's the 23rd of October. It's Wednesday. How are you doing?
Doing pretty well. I'm surrounded by screens. I'm surrounded by my friends in the modern market. Love that. I'm also not surprised. I always told myself that I never want to go back to my trading desk setup that I used to have in investment banking. And it took me less than a week in the trenches to basically replicate the setup that I used to have and trade like I used to do. It's very, very addictive, but it's fun.
Maybe this is like a different version of the singularity. Like everything converges, everything's trying to be the everything app. Like all apps converge on being the everything app. All desk setups converge into being screens everywhere. Is that a reasonable position?
It is. And I think the future has to be something like the Apple Vision Pro, where you just are surrounded by screens in mixed reality and you can move around with them. That would just be beautiful.
I see. I think that might be the case. Going to give Brad a moment to warm up back in screen. Let him know. Let us
Dude,
know.
how do I feel? You guys look good. It's actually streaming now.
Very nice. Sounds good. How you doing, my man? You well?
Yeah, it's crispy. Good. Yeah, so in this part of Vietnam, there's a custom clothes tailoring is the big thing. So I went today, got suited, like they did the measurements and everything. So we'll see. They tried to push some suits on me. I'm not about that life anymore, but yeah, having a lot of fun.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. The thing, like, you're not a management consultant anymore, but I bet you will buy suits. When you're in Vietnam, when you're in Thailand, you will buy a suit, even if you don't have to wear a suit anymore. It's just something that you've got to do, right?
No. They tried. I'm firm with that. I had to purge so many formal clothes whenever I was back at my place. It's like literally 25, 35 buttoned up shirts, like, several suits and shit. I'm not about that anymore.
But you've still bought one now.
No, I just got this one's a cool little pullover. Dude, yeah, it's like a bamboo and some other shit. It's pretty cool looking.
Cool. Sounds pretty exciting. Sammy, what about you? How are things your side?
Good. No tailor-made suits, but I got myself a nice little order this morning with this the rec drinks.
Ooh, that is very nice.
It's good.
So what are we looking at for the people who are listening in? What are we looking at?
So it's weird actually. When you put things on the screen, you have to move the opposite way to what you expect. It's counterproductive. But yeah, this is so Rec Drinks. They launched their it was probably about 6 months ago. They launched it. I think NFT Paris was the pilot. But this is a sparkling lime flavored drink. So it's not an alcoholic. Nice little refreshing drink in the morning. So I'll give it a whirl.
What are the macros on that bad boy?
It's pretty much 0 across the board, and then
it's so healthy.
I mean, it's got 5 grams of sugar. 5 grams. 5 grams of sugar.
I mean, I'm only interested in calories. If the calories are low, I'm chugging them things.
I think they reduced the sugar to the 5 grams that Sammy said. It used to be a bit more because it was the very first question that I asked Obi myself. What are the macros in that? Is there sugar? Is there a lot of sugar? No sugar? He said they went down to this amount now, which I think is pretty cool.
So energy-wise, it's 26 calories for a 330 ml can, so it's not masses.
Like it. Christian Jensen in the YouTube comment says, sponsored by Rect. Unfortunately not, but we are investors. At least myself and Sammy are, I believe. So how does that investment taste, Sammy? Tasting good?
Currently, yeah, it's an overpriced can at the moment, but we'll see how that tracks.
Yeah, it's a very, very expensive kind of sparkling water at the moment. Hopefully it will pay itself back at some point in time. Good stuff. Let's get into the show as usual to get you into the price action and the headlines as always, starting with the snapshot. Let's start with the price action actually. Bitcoin is down 1% to 66.5K. ETH is down just a couple of percent to 2.5K. Solana is down 1% to $166. On the meme side of things, let's take a quick look. Doge is down 4%, back down to 0.14, around that. Pepe's down 3%, WIF's down 3%, Bonk's down 5%, Popcat's down 1% as well. Things seem to be broadly down. Mog's down 6 or 7% as well. So most things down around that region on the meme side. Getting into the headlines themselves, as we said at the top of the show, billionaire hedge fund manager Paul Tudor Jones says he is long gold, Bitcoin, and commodities. I wrote a little tweet on that earlier today. Sammy's going to be breaking that down in a bit more detail after he watched the full interview. Would recommend listening to Sammy's take because then you'll have no need to listen to the full take. Pump Fun in the second headline announces video tokenization. I know Bread's been thinking on this kind of social-fi product style products for quite some time. He will be delivering a bit of a breakdown there on what's going on. There's a bit of carnage on the Pump Fun website, I understand, in the last 24 hours. So he'll break that down. And then finally, the GOAT token has hit another all-time high, gone past $600 million now, as Mark Andreessen publishes a podcast dedicated to the Truth Terminal, the GOAT token, and the current and future convergence of AI and crypto, which is when people start talking like that, that gets people excited, I think. When AI confused with crypto, I think that's definitely pretty exciting. Legendary will be speaking to that a bit later in the show. Some notable sales from around the space. CryptoPunk 6 Straight, which sold for 75 ETH just a few days ago, has been resold to Punk's OTC for 80 ETH. Nice little 5 ETH flip there for the buyer. CryptoPunk 3D glasses sold for 41 ETH, and a Botto 1 of 1 sold for 9 ETH as well. That's a decentralized AI project, which is very, very cool. That's the price action and the headlines. Legendary, you're going to take us to the NFT market to see what's going on there.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a look. Bored Apes up 1%, sitting at a 12.3 ETH floor. Pudgies down 1.6%, corrected down to 9.28 ETH in terms of the floor price. Azuki are having another day as a stable coin, sitting unchanged from yesterday at a 5.17 ETH floor. Miladies had a pretty big correction actually over the last 24 hours. They are down almost 8%, back at a 4.5 ETH floor, but still actually up over the week, still up 4.6%. As you perfectly managed, as you perfectly shared as part of the notable sales, we have that sales activity in the Botto collection because of the AI hype, very, very likely also connected to what we see in the on the meme side of things. And it's not only the Botto NFTs, also the Botto token has been up a fair bit, has been up 18% over the last 24 hours, up 73% over the last month. Definitely a AI project that's been around for a while, where basically an AI is determining or an AI is generating art that's being then minted. I know that you like this for a very, very long time, and I had completely forgotten about it, but it's nice to see it coming both back in terms of the NFT side and the token side.
Yeah, Botto is super cool. They also got a bunch of 101s being auctioned by Sotheby's or Christie's like right now as we speak as well. So that might be part of the resurgence, as well as people realize, yes, all this AI stuff is going on and people are getting excited about that. Oh, wait, this old AI coin, which has been around for since the last cycle, actually, producing quality art is there and is undervalued compared with all these new things that are running to crazy valuations. So I think that's fair. Thanks for bringing that up. Let's hit the Web3 roundup to get people up to speed with everything else that's happening as well. The first Democratic member of Congress endorses a strategic Bitcoin reserve. That is, Representative Kana becomes the first Democratic member of Congress to endorse a strategic Bitcoin reserve. He said Bitcoin that has been seized by the US government should be used as a strategic reserve asset, given its potential for appreciation. Like to hear that. Number 2, Vitalik publishes latest article on possible futures for Ethereum protocol called The Verge, Part 4. Azura announces a $6.9 million raise to connect the world to decentralized finance. Seems like there's a bit of a movement here to try to get more people on board on the decentralized side. No, Infinex is trying to do something similar as well. So we'll keep on top of that. And then finally, Coinbase partners with NBA team Golden State Warriors. That's pretty cool. Hopefully it doesn't go the way FTX did when it started partnering with sports teams. Hopefully we're not that part of the cycle yet. Azuki reveal episode 2 teaser called Fractured Reflections. This is obviously their anime series. Pretty high quality stuff. NFT Art Platform Foundation announced Instagram rebrand to focus on the creative social network. This got a lot of traction online. People were, I don't know if they were upset or just maybe disheartened that the kind of a pure art platform couldn't necessarily survive by being purely about art. But I think that's the way things are going. They need to try to find like another value prop rather than just being a marketplace to sell art. And then finally, Argentina capital Buenos Aires adds decentralized ID solution built on ZK Sync for 3.6 million users. That's pretty interesting. Effective October the 1st, 2024, all active users will be using a digital platform in Buenos Aires that residents use to access government services and documents. So interesting implementation of cryptographic technology. Legendary. That is the Web3 Roundup. Anything catching your attention from there? Any stories that you like before we get into the main headlines today?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually the last piece of news that you shared on the decentralized ID solution. I remember when we on the show started to talk for the first time about like zero knowledge proof, and in the beginning, it was a struggle for many people to kind of like conceptualize that and come up with reasonable examples. And seeing that a government basically is moving that fast and wanting to adopt the technology is positively surprising, because I basically remember how we in the first, at first explained obviously the use cases, but also kind of explained how a zero knowledge proof could work with it, like, typical cave example, 2 people walk into a cave, opposite sides, there's a door in the middle, only 2 keys. If you, B, and I have one, can unlock it, and a zero knowledge proof would make sure that you have the key without you having to disclose to me that you basically have it, but then we know that the door unlocks. And it was like a very, very abstract example. Obviously, back then we said, look, this could be used to, I don't know, have a credit score that you don't have to disclose your holdings, but you can guarantee that you're good for a 100K loan or whatever. And it's very, very pleasing to see someone adopting that tech in a very fast fashion, or in what I think is a fast fashion.
Yeah, I remember the first time you explaining ZK stuff to me, and I had always said, as soon as people say the letter ZK, my brain just starts switching off slowly, like ZK, and then it just all starts petering away into the darkness. But with the increased explanations and also with Bread's explanations of breaking stuff on the technical side down, I'm feeling pretty proficient now at this stuff. So kind of enjoying, I'm enjoying understanding the tech more finally, which is quite nice. Brad, anything catching your attention from the Web3 Roundup? Any other bits of news that you're finding interesting before we get into the main stuff?
I'm actually just going to push what I just said a little bit further, and just like to give the context of from the infrastructure / technical side. Like, yeah, ZK is largely perceived across the ecosystem as like the future of where all this stuff is going. And the reason it isn't there now is because ZK versus optimistic is just that with ZK, you have to front load a lot of work. So you do some shit and then you produce something that's very small, very compact, that just proves it can't be generated unless the thing is true, right? And that thing is useful because if it exists, it's true. That's awesome. That allows for like things to be faster, more scalable, whatever. But the processing time it takes to actually get to that point needs to come down, because it takes a lot of fucking effort to do that. So once technology or the research gets far enough along that the time to create this thing goes from minutes to seconds to milliseconds, then like that's the long-term vision of ETH, is that you have just these small little things that have a lot of work done up front, or just flying around all over the place. And that's like the ultimate like user experience, because all that stuff is easy to verify.
Love it. Love the additional breakdown. Funky, did you just have your hand raised? Welcome to the stage, my friend. Any final contribution here before we get into the other segments?
Yeah, GM gang, I hope you can hear me. I'm walking on a New York street, but I was just basically going to say what Brett said. That and one of the tropes that I heard a lot at Permissionless was ZK is the end game, to Brett's point.
I actually just saw a podcast today that's produced by someone from Matter Labs, which I think is the team behind ZK Sync, called ZK is the end game. So they're definitely getting...
It was the founder.
Okay, yeah. So that branding is definitely, it's a good phrase. It's a good phrase. I'll give them that. Sammy, a quick one from you. Anything taking your attention here before we get into the weekly segment and the main headlines?
Literally just echoing both these guys. I think that particular piece of news was interesting to me because we have this idea of onboarding millions or billions of people into crypto, but actually I think it's a lot of the stuff that's going to happen over the next decade is going to be kind of under or behind the scenes. And you've got stable coins, which is a killer use case. You've got decentralized IDs for governments to be used. And I think they're not the first to start this. I think Japan, Germany, and Estonia have also pushed decentralized IDs for government use cases. So there will definitely be more to come.
Okay. Like it. Look, we're going to get into the headlines as usual in just a little bit. But before we do that, I hope we've got a pretty personal and pretty interesting segment today to do with branding. This is our weekly entrepreneurial segment, Publish and Profit, where we explain some of the key secrets and tips to making money online as a creator. Today, we'll focus on the importance of branding and why you have to invest in it if you want to work with the best people in the industry. And I'm actually going to walk you through some of the decisions and things we've targeted recently in order to get to where we are. This segment is brought to you by Lil Nouns, an expansion DAO based on the famous Nouns DAO, who fund cool creative endeavors which can proliferate in a nounish meme. So when you start out, I think it's fair to say that the content you produce defines you. But when you start to look for partnerships and you start to professionalize a bit more, companies are much more conscious of brand and how your brand looks next to theirs. So this was evident yesterday when we were speaking to Han, the founder of Shape. He explained how much time and effort they've spent on their branding because he considers brand to be, he said, the feeling or emotion which people think about when they think about you, which is obviously super important to inspire a good feeling. An interesting thing about that too, though, when I was thinking about it, is that it's intangible and people are unlikely to tell you what they think. It's almost like an unarticulated feeling, and people are unlikely to tell you your brand sucks if they like you and they want to be polite. And the reason why I think about this even more is I just got back from the Ledger office in Paris, which they had completely ripped out and designed from scratch. And I noticed how detailed the planning and integration of the branding was inside the building. Just two examples of this was in the lift up, all of the floors and the numbers were written in the same Ledger font and kind of inscribed in the same way. And then they had these sets of iconography in each room, all completely on brand, to explain what the purpose of that room was for, whether it's for big meetups, talks, private areas, entertaining or whatever. But the point was that the branding was so deep, like in the DNA, that it ran through the building. So that kind of inspired me. And now that we've got our content moving, I wanted to start to embed our identity more visually into our brand. This is a process we'd started already, but that made me certain that what we were doing was the right thing. So I thought it'd be interesting to just share some of the process of how we went about this. So what I'm about to share is like the first version of the branding that we got with our designer, where we told him, like, this is the brief, this is what we want from you. Can you please provide something to do with the logo, a word mark, banners, and color palettes? And the first thing that the designer does is they kind of go through this kind of thought exploration of like what your brand means. They kind of explain what your brand could potentially mean to someone. So here they say, you know, people are easily influenced. We rely on the opinions of others to inform our decisions around crypto and Web3. But what is the point of becoming a sheep in a market laced with unpredictability? It's like trying to set the tone for the show. Then it says, then it has this truth section, which is like, the modern market does not force an opinion, it provokes one. And like, this is just a concept that he was coming up with. And we had to be like, yeah, we think that's who we are. Or like, no, we don't think that's who we are. So we went through this. We went through a few different brand characteristics. He'd provided this first logo, which is nothing like what we have at the moment. But it was just a first cut. And we had these like different options. maybe logos with just an M and an M, modern market. And, you know, he came with a variety of color palettes as well, some typography stuff. In the end, we didn't like this, and we had to go back and say, look, we like some of these aspects, but it's not hitting for us. It kind of felt like a startup vibe, maybe like a university style project in some way. So what we then had was a series of different iterations of what it could look like. And in the first go, we were all thinking green at the time. So we had like a bunch of logos here, a bunch of typographies, a bunch of different options for the word mark, which is what is called for like the full name. We had the version of the Modern Market show. If you're just listening in and you can't see, like there's just a whole host of different options. We had the M on top of each other. We had the M inverted with mirrors, like as if it's in a mirror to each other. Again, I felt like we were getting closer here, but we were still not really there. And there was these cool other like phrases that he was coming up with, which I thought were cool, like the business of NFTs, crypto, and making money online. I really liked. So then he tried again. We were still on the green color, and we had like a bunch of other double M's. We kind of worked through all of these, and this version, I remember speaking to Legendary. We're like, it's just not hitting. Like, what's wrong? Something's missing. Some of this stuff is like gave me MTV vibes. It's like we're not a new age music channel. Some of the stuff I kind of liked, but it just wasn't right, and I wasn't comfortable with moving forward with something that we weren't happy with. Then we switched color scheme, and we went to the blues. This one reminded me of McDonald's, which I thought was funny because if this doesn't work out for us, that's probably where we'll end up. But I thought that wouldn't be a good representation for the brand. But we had all different other options as well, like blues, you know, different other ones. But again, nothing was really hitting for us. And then actually, finally, we got this one, which was like a random one that he sent through. It was like, oh, by the way, I've got some other options. And it was the kind of crown, which was kind of hidden as there's two M's hidden in the crown. And it was just like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, I like that. And here were like different options of that. So there wasn't just one, there were a few different options. And in the end, I'd kind of wanted some complexity, but after looking at the ones that were more complex, we kind of just went back to the beginning. I was like, actually, do you know what? I think the simple, straightforward one looked the best. Like literally just the two M's next to each other, kind of indicating a crown, two-tone with the colors. So I thought that was really cool. And then we got like, so then this is like the fight. Once we told him, yes, that's what we like. We got this document, which is like a 30-page brand exploration. So this is really cool that I want to show you guys. You know, we're still part of the process. Like we're still finalizing some bits. See what you like here. So we've got the logo, you've got the word mark, you've got the color palette. You've also got these, and you've got them all next to each other here, which I think is really cool. And then you've got these like future looking ways of how you can design this moving forward. So you've got Modern Market Live, which is kind of what this show has become, or how we're going to brand it more. Then you've got these options for like Modern Market Live, Modern Market Insights, Modern Market Knowledge, Modern Market How to, and this is just the designer coming up with it. We're not necessarily going to do these things perfectly, but you know, you've got the brand, like, so this is called the brand architecture, which I thought was really cool. And when I saw that, I was like, right, I can even imagine this moving forward. Then we had this graphics exploration. This is more for like backgrounds and, you know, partnership announcements and things like that, where you're using the two M's visually in different ways. So we scrolled through all of these. I was like, I don't know if we'd use this like concretely, but it was like a cool vibe. Like I liked the general feeling of it. Some of this was a bit too artistic and I didn't think would work at all. But we saw this one. I was like, that's a cool like logo, standalone. And so that is going to be featured that's featured on our YouTube thumbnails, and it's on our outro clips, which are going to be coming pretty soon. This was a cool exploration as well, where you just had like multicolored M's going in different directions. So I thought that, yeah, we're going to use this in some way. So this is like part of the journey of how we were doing this. And then, you know, one of the things we had to fix as well was the YouTube thumbnails. We had this horrible option at the start, which just didn't work at all. I think Chris, Legendary, agreed with me on that. And then I think we're settling on this one, which is the one we've got on YouTube at the moment, which I think is pretty cool. integrating some of the stuff. All those, I'd got feedback that if we were in black and white, it kind of looks like an obituary and it looks like we've passed away or something. So we need to be in color, and that will be like the main takeaway for that. So like in general, it's quite a fun, entertaining process. It's taken more than probably 150 emails back and forth with the designer, so people have some context of like how much time it takes to get things right. There's like some funny things happen. There's some annoying things that happen. There's some things that are like completely terrible and end up being a complete waste of time. But in the end, you've got to go through that journey to figure out the right direction and try to get your brand communicating the thing that you want to communicate about yourself. So I hope that was an interesting look behind the scenes into what we've been doing. Legendary, what's your takeaway from the process that we've been through, and what are your thoughts on kind of looking at all of that back now that we've been through the process for like a month and a half, 2 months?
Look, first of all, I'm still amazed that we were able to do that fast. I remember when I did the last rebrand for a rather significant finance product in Europe. I don't want to disclose the company, but that was a multi-million-dollar rebrand. Not as expensive as the 50 mil that MakerDAO spent to rebrand to Sky, but still $1 million project that took more than a year, and also started with 3 lines that got worked out, and then a decision was made, etc. So exactly the same process. Obviously with more deliverables on the graphic and content side, just being able to like conceptually speedrun that in 1.5 months was very, very enjoyable, because when you in the beginning, said this is the time when we need the rebranding to be done with, because there's a big partnership coming. That partnership was obviously, now that it's it's been going live for a while, that was Shape. We wanted to be done with the rebranding when we announced Shape, to be out there, because we knew that's going to get reach with the new branding. And I was like, dude, I don't know if we can deliver this in that short amount of time, if the designer can do that. So we need to be like even shorter with the time frame. So we said to him, we needed it 2 weeks. And I was like fully expecting, he says, nah, you guys are crazy, I'm out. But he said yes. And we actually managed to have all the things that we need in time to launch. And we delivered a bit, some of the stuff like the word mark and the logo was done a bit later, but we had enough to announce Shape with it. And going back through it is kind of funny, because I forgot like some of the initial designs already, because I already got used to the new bottom market look and feel. I have almost forgotten the MTV style logos, but I don't know, now that I've seen like everything once more while you were going through the designs, I feel like we absolutely made the right decisions in how we started that process. And I think one last thought on that, from the design side, like from the designer, the most difficult thing is, and this is why it's so hard to find good people to do a rebranding, they have to understand your brand. They have to understand, like intellectually what's behind the modern market, the questioning thing, like all those philosophies that he comes up with in those 3 routes. It's basically to explore what's the best fit for you guys. And in order to do that, he needs to understand Web3. He needs to understand what the modern market is doing. And he also needs to understand what the competition is doing, to kind of find a way to position us in that ecosystem while being a complete outsider to it. Obviously is an advantage to having this like outside perspective, but it's also super challenging to like work yourself into this new field. And this is probably what I would find the most like fascinating about working in design. What I would absolutely hate if I were a designer is to go through 100 iterations of that. Then the client being like, oh, actually the first version was the best, but thank you for doing 99 additional iterations. Let's go back to number 1.
Yeah. Fortunately, the last one was the best one, and we didn't go back too much. But yeah, it's been an eye-opening process. Never been through it before, so it was definitely harder work than I anticipated. But and what we've showed there, that wasn't even actually all of them. Like there was a few more and in between, which just fall by the wayside, and I guess will be completely lost to the email junk folders at some point in time. But look, I hope that was an interesting kind of behind the curtains look into what we're doing as we're building out our business. I'm sure it applies to lots of people's businesses as they continue to grow. Just wanted to be transparent about that stuff, and hopefully it's helpful. So shout out to Lil Nouns as well for sponsoring this segment, always funding creative, cool endeavors that further the nounish meme. Look, we want to get into the main headlines today. Big discussion points. I think Sam is going to be ready first with the big news coming from billionaire hedge fund manager Paul Tudor Jones and what he said in an interview yesterday. Sammy.
Yeah, so I think it's important. I'll get to what inflating your way out of this position or the situation that the US government's in a moment. But I think it's first just good to set the scene. So Paul Tudor Jones he came to kind of rose to prominence during the 1987 stock market, and he's made a number of decent bets on the market and direction it goes. So he's the chief investment officer of Tudor Investment Corp, highly respected. He's pushing the concept that we're going to effectively inflate our way out of the $33 trillion of fiscal debt that the US government is in. Now, what does that mean? Well, I think there's a few economic levers that a government can have to manage their monetary policy, and one of those is interest rates. But obviously, if you've got a significant amount of fiscal debt and you increase interest rates, then that interest is then going to accrue to the underlying debt, and you're going to end up in a worse position than you are now. I think last year alone, there's about 1.8 trillion in deficit that kind of added to that fiscal debt. Now, there's another option, which is kind of counterintuitive, and that is pushing inflation. So where the government becomes incredibly dovish, so that term opposite to hawkish, which is effectively where you turn the money printer on and you effectively inflate your way out of it. Now, it's counterintuitive because you think, well, actually, you're kind of debasing the currency. You're making it a worse situation for the average person because the purchasing power kind of goes down. So you're not going to be able to afford as much in the future as you are today. And that concept it's like widely known, and generally interest rates are kind of tend to be increased to rein in that debt to reduce spending. However, in this situation, the government's main income is through taxes. So if you increase inflation, so assets such as real estate, stocks, equities, and obviously crypto, so bond, Bitcoin or ETH or whatever it is, you can then tax those increases in the asset value, and that tax revenue would then come back into the government to kind of help pay down that debt. And I think that is the concept that Paul Tudor Jones, in a nutshell, is trying to get at. Now, it's an interesting one with a global currency, because like Bitcoin, a global asset, because the US fiscal policy doesn't necessarily apply to people outside of that. And that's kind of my take, because being from the UK, I know there's other tax regimes that are going on at the moment, but ultimately it effectively means that you can effectively capitalize on the upside of those assets appreciating in value, whether it's Bitcoin, real estate, equities, without having to suffer the consequences of having to pay those the additional taxes. And obviously, if you hold it for a prolonged period of time, and I think that's the same in Austria, where if you hold it for over a period of time, then you don't pay certain taxes on those realized gains. So it's an interesting concept. And actually, I think given the situation the US government is in at the moment, it's a pretty likely one to sort of roll out. But then again, I don't know if Trump gets into power. There was a number of tax regimes or tax cuts that Paul refers to in his video. Well worth a watch if you want to get a better understanding. But essentially, if Trump gets in, will those tax cuts take place, and therefore will they be able to kind of rake in that additional revenue from taxes in the event that does happen? So well worth a watch, and that's kind of the TLDR. And happy to have any questions because it might be a little bit complicated.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, thanks so much for that summary. It's super helpful. Definite conclusion there was that all roads lead to inflation. And as you say, the playbook to get out of this, he says, as a quote, is you have to inflate your way out. That's the only thing that's going to happen. Just on the tax cuts that you mentioned, one additional thing that he said in the interview was that the US are handing out tax cuts like they're Mardi Gras beads. It's completely unrealistic, and they have 0% chance of being enacted. So like, and the criticism didn't just, I guess it was two sides of criticism that I kind of read in. One was from the fiscal situation, which is completely out of control. I think that was fair to say. He thinks it's completely out of control. The tax cuts will not be able to happen. There's 0% chance of them being enacted. But on the kind of more presidential side and everything's going on from the political standpoint, he also said about both candidates, Trump and Harris are the two people who are least suited for the job ahead of them. Didn't seem, when he was pressed to say like who he would prefer, he said that I can't say because I have too many financial interests, basically, and I need to work with either person, and there are good people on both sides. And so he was fairly diplomatic about that. But when it came to talking about those two individuals specifically, he said they're both the two people least suited for the job ahead. On the kind of prediction markets and what's going on there, he said that the market is suggesting that Trump will win. But he did say, and we've been speaking about this before, the betting markets are likely to be skewed by Republicans and people in crypto. That was his position. We've like debated that a little bit, but that was his position. And he also said that he himself is positioned for Trump victory, but mainly as a consequence of polling numbers. So that's maybe something that he's leaning on more than the kind of financial prediction markets, which we increasingly are leaning on. So those are a few more bits of information for me that I thought was interesting. Maybe a final one, because and then I'll maybe go to Legendary to get some reflections, or Brad. He said to the question of like, he said he was long gold, Bitcoin, and commodities, and did not want anything to do with fixed income, things like bonds. The interviewer asked, or they said that life is relative, so you could buy US bonds, or you can buy bonds from someone else. And that position exists in the US, where it's like, well, look, you're going to buy someone's bonds, you might as well buy ours, because who else are you going to buy? We're the best, so you want to buy our bonds instead. But he simply said, or you could not buy bonds. So I think his position is like, we're getting ready for a time or period where people might just decide to not buy bonds. And I don't think that's something that either the US or the world in general is prepared for. So that was his position. Legendary. Did you have any reflections on it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Sammy made a very fantastic explanation of what's going on. And I think we had, like, well, not we, but the world has had this discussion on, we're spending too much, the US is spending too much, separate countries are spending too much for decades. But this time it feels a bit different. It feels like there is a drastic change in spending and in debt that countries like the United States are making. And just to bring up a chart on that, I'm sharing this on screen. We are looking at data from the US Department of Treasury that goes back to 1970. On the y-axis, you have the US debt in millions of dollars that basically slowly rose throughout the 70s to the 90s, where it hit 4 millions for the first time. And ever since, so basically in the last 24 years, that number did a 9x. So that is an exponential growth in debt. And this is why I think the concerns are starting to get more serious, more actually concerned than in the period when, people in the 90s were saying we're spending too much, because they were used to countries not having any debt at all. But now we are kicking in, or we've been in a phase of exponential debt growth for, let's say, the last 1.5 decades for sure. So this is why it's now actually becoming a real worry and concern.
And I think just to that point, like around normalizing debt and leverage, I think that if you think about the average person, they're kind of expected to get a mortgage on a house. They're expected to have a credit card. Whereas back in the day, that just wasn't necessarily a thing. So I think the general idea around debt and leverage, it can be good, it can be useful. But if everyone is expected to do it, especially if it's not being put into productive assets, then all of a sudden you end up in this position where it's a deteriorating situation.
Yes. I think that's, very interesting. It's one of these complicated, maybe it's not that complicated. It's one of these unfortunate situations where the people holding these assets are like, yes, this is so good, my assets are going to go up. But at the same time, like, the fabric of society, or the economic fabric of society, is kind of getting ripped apart here. And I'm sure there's going to be all kinds of negative externalities as well. It's like, yes, the assets might go up, but at what cost? Because I think all kinds of others, like, the one thing I think people don't think about is, like, if Bitcoin goes to 250, if Bitcoin goes past 100, it goes to 250K, how much is the rest of your stuff costing? You can't just assume that the rest of the stuff is going to be the same. For Bitcoin to be at 250, everything else is going to be way higher as well. So I just don't think that's necessarily one of the perspectives people have. Brad, wanted to come to you first if you had anything on this. Otherwise, we're going to go to Funky before we head into the next headline. Brad first.
Yeah, I got nothing. I'm just laughing at all this intellectual conversation and then what I have to handle next. So looking forward to that.
It's going to be a smooth transition. Funky, welcome to the stage again, my friend. Final take on your favorite topic of Bitcoin, and actually more specifically this Paul Tudor Jones interview.
I can't wait to watch it. I think Sammy did a great breakdown, but I just wanted to share a memory. 1991, 33 years ago, sophomore in high school. And I walked into my history class and my teacher was pounding his desk and he was showing me the headline and it was US hits $1 trillion in debt. And he was just apoplectic at the fact that we had hit $1 trillion in debt. And I didn't get it at the time. And then I had a kid whose father was an economist when the Great Recession happened. This is like circa 2009. And he's like, they're going to inflate away the money. They're going to ruin the value of the money. And I'm like, what is this kid going on about? And then I got into Bitcoin and now I understand it all.
Love the anecdotes, Funky. Keep them coming. Absolutely brilliant. Brad, perfect transition from the hardness of money and how the government is inflating away our valuable hard-earned cash. The next headline is Pump Fund announces video tokenization. You're going to break that down for us.
Watch me handle this segue. You know what else gets hard? Penises. You know what penises are at? Pump Fund, because they integrated videos. You hear about that? Perfect. Yeah, TLDR, that's what's going on. Pump Fund announced that they had allowed for videos to be tokenized. FYI, they're not on chain. The thumbnail is on chain, but the actual video is not on chain. They said that, but it doesn't really matter. Yeah, so you can actually have tickers that are have videos. Yeah, the one they showed was like a little meme moment from Trump. Unfortunate side effect of this, as is tradition, because the internet is renowned for its time to penis. There are a bunch of lewd and or illegal things being tokenized, we'll say, and used as meme coins. So be leery of going there for a multitude of reasons. But that's what's being done. We've seen some takes from a few people like Imran Khan, he's the creator of Alliance Style, which is where Pump came out of, Fancy Top, a few other notable apps, Time.Fun. He mentioned this as a way to have creator monetization and almost vampire attack the likes of TikTok, right? So you have these people that instead of uploading their viral video to TikTok, they would do it to Pump.Fun in a way to earn money, potentially. Now it's a little far-fetched, obviously, TikTok and Pump Fund don't have the same attention mindset, but it is somewhat relevant. Like it can be done. But yeah, so everyone's just discussing to see like how they think this is going to progress. And as is tradition, the internet went the worst ways, but we persevere.
Yes, interesting. What did you think about? So, what's your take on it then? Like you said, you think it's a little bit far-fetched to think that creators, at least immediately, will go to this instead of any of the other traditional platforms. There was also this.
Yeah, I mean, is it a paradigm shift? No. Is it the natural progression of the app? Yes, right. Like they're wanting to build communities, like they were doing static images, and the creator of Forecaster commented, Dan Romero commented on it and said, like, obviously short form videos and video content broadly is the current medium of exchange for communicating memes, right? That's the thing that's proliferating more broadly now. So he said, yeah, it's a smart experiment. Let them play. They have mind share, so they can do stuff like this, and they will automatically get buy-in, usage, whatever. So we'll kind of see it play out naturally because people will give it a try because it's Pump. So they have that leeway, and it'll allow us to see if it is an actual natural fit or if it's just something that's done flash in the pan and they move back to regular memes because they find out that images proliferate better than videos.
I like it. I think that's very fair. I think one thing that has to be said, fine, they've got this attention, fine, they're making all this money on Solana. But they ship fast. Like, it's not always the case that the category leader after establishing themselves as the category leader, it's not always the case that they keep producing new things to maintain their position, because there are so many Pump Fund competitors now, right? Every single chain or L2 that wants to launch is doing something similar. Like there's a Pump Fund.
Express had their thing, right? Yeah. Every single one of them has something. And the logical example of the not iterating is like the Friendtex, right? Friendtex came out, took over the entire timeline, stopped dead in its tracks, didn't do shit.
Exactly. Right? So I guess that was just me saying, like, friend text the perfect contrast, because like you were leading the category and you just didn't do the additional things to keep people coming, keep people interested and excited. So shout out to the Pump Fund team, really, to keep pushing the bar forward.
Do you think we'll see some Modern Market episodes on that?
No.
Brett's transition will be talked about as a little experiment.
That we can do. That's probably in keeping with the vibe on there at the moment. Interesting. I mean, we are exploring ways to tokenize. Like, I think it's an interesting concept for media people to tokenize in some form, and I just don't think anyone has really got the perfect method at the moment. So we are exploring. Will this be the one? Maybe we'll test with Brett's little clip first and see how we go. Look, we've got 8 minutes left for today's show. Definitely we'll get into our final headline. Legendary GOAT is at an all-time high. Mark Andreessen will not stop talking about it. Is this the perfect coin, perfect AI coin that represents the current and future convergence of AI and crypto, in Mark Andreessen's words? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, quick step back from that, just to kind of understand the significance of the podcast and the attention that Mark Andreessen has as, you know, the co-founder of A16Z, which we know from the crypto perspective, but it's a conglomerate of funds that have more than $44 billion invested, took up another $7 billion for 5 additional funds this year. So very, very loud voice in tech. And he's been going on to keep talking about GOAT. Had exactly the podcast that you mentioned, that essentially from the get-go goes to talking about, I'm sharing this on screen right now, about Truth Terminal and the GOAT experiment. Token is actually the new all-time high as we're speaking right now. It just pumped up to 28 mil. It's moving pretty fast, and it's very interesting because we're seeing, and it kind of connects perfectly to what Brett just has been saying before. We're seeing different metas competing with one another. Brett raised the fair question: is there even enough attention on having a video as a meme, or will people just want to watch an image? Then you obviously have that competition between, you know, or people just want a simple image. They don't want any complex AIs. You have many traders who said they just don't get the AI meta. And you have people like him sharing on screen a post by them who are basically nonstop talking about AI coins and kind of talking about this is a meta of sentient AI, of sentient memes who can talk, who can communicate, who can basically, by just being able to share and perpetuate information, have an easier thing of staying viral because they can stay viral themselves. Like Modang, for example, as the hippo, is dependent on going viral on social media, is dependent on actual human people sharing stuff. And then when you have all the attention on Truth Terminal and it keeps writing posts that go viral, it's kind of in a self-sustaining mode, especially as we've also seen posts from Truth Terminal coming out that have been tokenized pretty quickly. And whenever there was a post and there was something in there that could be tokenized, those tokens did run up from basically 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 mil within half an hour, within 1 hour. And that's the very interesting, I don't know if it's a paradigm shift and if this will be sustainable, but for now, it's a very interesting thought experiment that basically AI is kind of self-solving for the question of staying relevant. And that's something we've been discussing in the show over and over and over again, right? We talked about Jack Butcher as an artist and how he conceptually has created a project with Opepens where he is basically staying relevant all the time by making sure that only new ideas are brought to life that have been voted as relevant enough, with exceeding interest by the community, but it's still a manual process, right? That it's being steered by a human. Then with Modang, you obviously have the dependency on the whole internet to be a fan of that cute animal or whatever the meme is. And I don't know if AIs could kind of solve for that and be self-sustaining viral tools, but that is an interesting thought experiment. And I do see the infatuation that Andreessen has with it and why he can't stop talking about it. Because if you think about it like that, it is pretty fascinating. And of course, from the crypto side, people just love watching a chart that, you know, shoots up to 730 mils in a couple days.
Yeah, I like it. Very helpful summary. Thank you for that, Legendary. 2 questions for the boys before we close out today, Sam, on price, and then Bread on crypto X AI. Sam, you are in GOAT from near the beginning, actually. What's your kind of perspective on it? Not necessarily only from a price perspective, but how are you reading what Legendary said, and what's your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting token. I think the terminal of truths, the actual AI bot that's on Twitter, that must be absolutely printing in terms of like how much it's going to get paid from Elon this month. But I think like just the interactions I'm seeing on Twitter is the interesting thing for me, and how it like, because it seems to kind of take in what we're talking about and then starts divesting it on the timeline. And he's been given Sol, so he's been given a Sol wallet, a Bitcoin wallet. He's been airdropped Goat. I think he's the first millionaire AI terminal now officially, because the value of Goat that's in its wallet is quite big. And it's, to me, that's interesting, where like, will he, I don't know if he's connected to the wallet to be able to sell it directly, but will he say to whoever controls the wallet, sell XYZ, or like, will there be a discussion there? And will he become like a KOL where he kind of shills it and then dumps it? And will he follow that suit, or will he have this ethics mindset? And there's actually a white paper that Andy, the founder of this AI bot, created, and it's well worth the read because it kind of goes into the ethics. It's kind of a bit tongue-in-cheek as well, just the language used, but that to me is interesting. And there's obviously a lot more behind creating this and where they plan to take it than just your average token that was launched. And yeah, Goatius Maximus is just a viral internet meme as well. Like, you actually look to see what that is, but yeah, we'll see where it goes. But yeah, I think the way it's going, I think it probably will hit $1 billion, especially if you've got sort of A16Z behind it in a way.
Yeah, it kind of unites crypto Twitter with whatever VC Silicon Valley money that might find it fun to speculate as well, right?
And if you look at the amount that A16Z is investing in sort of crypto AI exploration, research, stuff like that, like this just kind of fits into that, and it's actually doing pretty well, and it's capturing like the attention on Twitter. Like this thing posts like 5 times an hour, and each of those posts gets about like 30 to 60K impressions. So it's just like the sheer amount of attention that it's getting at the moment is insane.
He's gonna be a millionaire from Elon.
Yeah, exactly, that would be the next way to monetize. Final question, Brad. We've got just a minute or two left. This convergence of AI and crypto, I think that's probably the part that interests me the most. Yes, this token is running up. It's exciting that it goes so high. What are your thoughts on the convergence of AI and crypto? Has that just been a meme up to this point? Can you see that being something which is meaningful moving forward? People say a lot that, you know, once AI become a more agent-like and are able to operate for you, the way that they'll be able to transact with you most naturally is with crypto, whether that's with the most decentralized crypto with ETH, or whether it's whatever other crypto that has been programmed to do. Is that a future that you see? What are your thoughts here?
I mean, yeah, even discussing this stuff on Twitter, you get pushback from Tolly, which Tolly just said, like, we have bots everywhere. Like, it's like, whether the difference is that, and this is how I frame it in my mind, right? We already are operating on blockchains that are 99% of transactions are automated, right? They're automated with bounded parameters like that. And the difference is now the parameters are unbounded with AI, or will be unbounded in this future. So like the actual experience is going to be largely the same. I absolutely see it going to a point where instead of, you know, you writing a chunk of code and the code says if A go B, if B go C, and it like being defined, and then once it hits the end stops, it'll get to a point where the actual AI can sit there and think and come up with its own conditions to extend whatever it's doing. So like the variance on what these bots can do may grow, and like you may see some fireworks with that where like people can learn to exploit them, or like they fuck up and like fuck up colossally, which would be really funny. But you already see that a little bit today, right? Like people abuse smart contracts that have parameters and say like, I followed the rules and I got you good. Like, right? Like that's going to happen. So like you may see a little bit more of that, and you may see, because the bots can be a little smarter, you may see that in the opposite direction where they find an exploit, or they find an arbitrage opportunity, or they find a whatever and they attack it. So experience will be largely the same because it's already 99% bots anyways, except the variance of what can happen is just going to continue to grow.
Interesting. Okay, I think because we're running out of time today, let's leave it there. I think this will be a topic that we come back to at some point in time in the future. Hope you enjoyed today's show. That is today's show. Remember, we go live every single day, Monday to Friday, for 1 hour at 7 a.m. Eastern Time. We're live on X Video, YouTube, and Spotify and Apple Podcasts, if that's where you prefer to catch up on your media. Thank you to my legendary co-hosts, legendary Brett and Sammy. Thank you so much for joining us today. As always, we'll be back with you again tomorrow. Hope to see you then. Bye-bye. Enjoy.